Coming up on the Pete Sousa Show on the Rogue Sports Network, NFL Draft Time. Who else to talk to? Jim Nagy, Executive Director of the Senior Bowl, NFL Scout, NFL Front Offices Executive for many years. He's been in the game for like 25 years. Doesn't look like he's been in the game for 25 years, which makes me sort of jealous. We talked to Jim about the process that these athletes go through, the process that scouts go through, the Senior Bowl, how it's a launching point for some of these young guys and young men who are looking to get their names in the NFL draft and who will get taken at the top of the NFL draft. And it's a revealing, fun interview with Jim. Also, we talked to my mom for a little bit. She had some critique about the show, and who better to patch in and talk to about that. And we talked to pro baseball player Stan Hough. We talked to Stan about the state of baseball today, the possibility of a team coming back to Central Texas, and some of the topical stuff that is going on in the sport today, umpiring, some of the celebrations, and Stan's experience getting drafted in the second round of the baseball draft. And as that relates to what maybe some of these young guys getting ready for the NFL draft are concerned. All that coming up. So the first thing that happens when I come up today, I open the door, and there's Mike, just like Wolfman Jack, like right in the doorway.
Uh-huh.
And he goes, "You need to go down to 16, get barbecue." Like,
he's very he's just looking out for us.
And by the way, you guys need to behave yourself with the free food around here. I've heard stories about we are in the beautiful Alico building, and so we're outfitted now in this lovely establishment. I'm still not here enough to give anybody a hard time, but we can't go down there like heathens and take all their food.
Mike
said they had Chick-fil-A one day. And
they did.
I'll say we took it all.
No,
so now they don't have Chick-fil-A anymore.
Took it all. That's a bit of a stretch. Like if there's 5 boxes and there's 5 people and we took 5 of them, yeah, we took it all. But it's not like we
Did you take 5 yourself?
No. Was I around somebody who might have? Maybe.
All right, so you guys.
But we had enough people for food we took. It wasn't like we're not heathens. That seems a little harsh.
We need to clean it up a little bit. But Mike was so obsessed with the barbecue. It was so great. Go ahead.
I was just saying, well, he came back. He was excited because he went down to heat up his lunch. Because I saw it first before you showed up. And he went down to heat up his lunch, and he came back with a whole nother plate and still holding the food that he went down there.
Because he gets to keep a lunch, and he gets this new hot meal that he wasn't expecting.
So I could tell he was excited.
Yeah, that's a sign of a low bar as far as excitement in somebody's life. But I have to admit, I'm right there with him.
Yeah, good barbecue is a reason to get excited.
I have had, in some of my lonelier days, I've had the person at Smoothie King remake my smoothie because I was basically like, this isn't cutting it, and this is going to be the best part of my day. Like, we need to do this over again.
Oh, man. Yeah. Do you have, what is your go-to?
Oh, it's a Gladiator.
Okay.
It's peanut butter. I get a Gladiator, peanut butter, banana, and chocolate.
Okay.
Yeah, chocolate flavor. And it's all protein, no sugar.
I got you.
Yeah. I mean, I love my sweets, but that's my way of kind of cleaning it up.
I got you. I'm still a little iffy on the whole like peanut butter and banana kind of mixture together, but
why?
I've just never enjoyed it that much. I don't know.
I love peanut butter with anything.
I agree with you there on that.
Coming up this weekend is the NFL draft. We were lucky enough to talk with Jim Nagy from the Senior Bowl, executive director of the Senior Bowl, about the draft, the intricate process that it is. It's a process that we as fans have been taken behind the curtain of over the course of the past 10 years, especially the last 5 years. And Jim, an executive in the NFL, former scout in NFL front offices, kind of knows – he knows a little bit about – he's a smart guy, so he knows the marketing side of the world in general, and he's been able to fuse his football knowledge with that, and it's taken the Senior Bowl to a whole nother level. I mentioned knowing Jim. I worked with him, Todd McShay, ESPN NFL draft scouting fame, a guy named Gary Horton, and Mike George was a sports agent. Gary was a former football. He worked in front offices as a scout and had worked for agents preparing players for the draft. So I got to be exposed to some of the stuff that was really eye-opening. And Jim and I talk about some of that stuff. And then, of course, Jim, like a rocket ship, just totally took off. And he has now had the opportunity, I think, to share more of his experiences with us around what he did in the NFL draft, and now he's able to share it through being executive director of the Senior Bowl. You brought up something interesting about the Senior Bowl. They're going to be featured in EA.
Yeah, in the new EA Sports college football game coming out in, I think, July was the date that they finally gave for it. I know that they've been announcing, I think the Heisman Trophy, but not necessarily all the awards, but I remember seeing that the Reese's Senior Bowl itself is going to be in there. So that, I think has to show you to a bit of how big the Senior Bowl has been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your experience like watching the draft and seeing players kind of come up?
So for me, I am still a little old school in a way that I do miss the 2-day, just Saturday and Sunday, because I loved being able to sit down, turn it on, and then just move to get up to go get food or, you go use the bathroom and come back. I think that seeing it went from a place of where I was interested, who my team going to pick. I kind of have an idea that maybe, we have these needs of just looking at it from a fan standpoint to now seeing it evolve of where the information that's out there on so many players, of just all the visits they take, of everything that happens at the combine, of even more in depth of these riders of knowing the players that your team is bringing in for a visit. So it's no longer just at a random dartboard of where I'm we need a cornerback. Now I know they're looking at, these 3 or 4 guys here, and you can kind of pinpoint. It seems to me that it's become more of a science in a way. I know that there was always a lot of people that were working on the draft to, make it be more and define guys like that. So maybe it's not that as a whole process it became more, but the amount of information that we as fans have privy to us seems to have gone up drastically.
Yeah, and so has, my mom gave me critique about a show that she'd watched, and she wanted Zach to talk more. And her wish has been granted.
There we go.
She wants less of me and more of Zach. And I had a chance to actually talk to her about that before we talked with Jim. So we're going to go to my mom, and then we'll go into Jim and then Stan Hough. Mom.
Hi, sweetheart.
Hey, how's it going?
Okay, I'm kind of in a rush. I have a 4:30 appointment for hand therapy, and I haven't taken Charlie out yet. So I'm trying to get him a quick walk. And of course, I'm still doing stuff in the house, which I've got to stop. Marty is coming over.
Yeah, Uncle Marty's coming tonight, huh?
Well, I'm going to meet him at the refectory.
Okay, hold on. Now I want to ask you about. I know you're running on borrowed time. What
That's okay, go ahead.
Yeah, what about the show last week? What do I need to improve on with that?
I'm not allowed to tell you.
No, tell me.
No, I just said I thought you were rambling a bit. I'm sure it's just me. Did you listen to it again?
Yeah, I listened to it. So you thought? It's a talk show, though.
That's right. Yeah, it's just you kept going from one subject to another. You know what I mean? You kept diverging.
Okay. What else?
Just relax. And you kept yanking at your shirt because you said that's that shirt and you're not wearing it again.
No, I'm not wearing the shirt again. I have a different outfit on today.
And the other thing you did is you kept playing with the microphone.
Okay.
You kept kind of pulling it to yourself, and then. But I do not want to inhibit you. You be yourself, okay?
Oh, after you just told me to do all this different stuff, now you want me to go back to being myself?
Yes, I do. I don't want you to screw up because of me.
No, I appreciate your help. All right, I love you very much, Mom.
But can you be yourself?
I am being myself. How would you say I haven't been myself? That's the one thing people would say is I am myself.
No, you are being yourself, darling. I don't mean that. I mean thinking about all these things Don't let it distract you. Is what I'm trying
Oh
to
yeah,
say.
I'm not gonna trust me, but I do appreciate it, and I'm going to use this content for our show. All right.
Okay, darling. I love you.
All right. Love you too, Mom.
Bye, babe.
All right. Bye. All right, so Jim Nagy, Executive Director of the Senior Bowl. You can find him on social media at JimNagy_SB. Maybe the reason you look so good, Jim, is because you're not on the road anymore as much as you were before.
Again, I don't know how good I look, but yeah, being off the road the last 6 years has certainly helped. It's good not being in Fairfields and courtyards 200 nights a year for sure.
So you were one of the, obviously your pedigree speaks for itself. I can always say I knew you back when, but even back when you were still like successful by the time I got a chance to meet you. Traverse City, Michigan. He goes to the University of Michigan, works in New York for an agent and a sporting publication about the NFL draft. And then you really start to ascend. It's Redskins, Patriots, Seahawks, right?
Chiefs in there too.
Chiefs,
yeah.
Okay.
Patriots, Chiefs, Seahawks. Yep.
All right, so your experience with the Patriots, I had to think of you when I was watching the Dynasty. And I'm sure you have like a lot of very good memories being a part of those front offices. When you watched, did you watch it?
I did. I think I've seen the first 4 episodes. Again, you're talking about how I look now. I did catch an episode of me, in the background on a practice. And man, I felt like I looked a lot younger back then. But yeah, really, really good memories like that. I know there's been some players, some of the guys that were interviewed for the show have taken some issue with how maybe they were portrayed, how the editing was done and things were spun. But man, for me, not being a part of that thing, it was like a walk down memory lane. It was pretty cool just to that was 20 years ago now. So as a young scout, to look back on that time, really formative years in my career, certainly look back with a lot of fond memories.
Well, I want to talk to you about, your experience, like I said, in front offices, and of course about the Senior Bowl and a couple things specific to this year's draft. Obviously, this is an incredible time to grab you. You, as the time you were a scout, now or leading up to the draft, a lot of times we talk about after the Senior Bowl, it's pro days. You went to a lot of pro days. What can you glean from a guy going to those pro days? What can you learn about somebody? Because now it's to the point where it's like you have to go there. You get your data. That's obviously so important. But there's so much more we don't know about what goes into that process.
Yeah, well, Pete, you're like my wife. She asked me, she's like, "Why do you go to these things?" But so it's like, why do I go to these things? I don't know. For me, the value is, seeing our guys that played the game here, supporting those guys through the process, connecting with NFL teams and all that. Like and talking to coaches for about next year's players and, stumbling into some of next year's players. Like when I was at Alabama, I ran into Jalen Milroe, had a good talk with him. So, but from scouts, I know you want to know what scouts do. The data, the numbers, very important, but really, it's another opportunity to be on campus and be around the player, observe him in his natural habitat, if you will, and another day in the building with all the people at the school. So you're in there all fall and you're asking questions. You're at a big school 2 or 3 times and trying to learn as much as you can, and then you get a chance to meet him here in Mobile at the Senior Bowl, and then again at the Combine. And so then you go to pro days, maybe you learn something in a conversation with the player himself that people at the school hadn't even brought up. So now you're going back to a position coach or the academic advisor. And, this is what came out of the interview. Can you help me with this? Is this true? Really just trying to get to know these guys, Pete, because it's really such a small window, honestly, for these teams. You think about these teams making $1 million, hundreds of millions of dollars they're going to be putting out over draft weekend to pay their rookie class. And you've got a window from February 1 at Senior Bowl till this week that we're in right now. And that's a really short period of time. So just getting back on campus, seeing everyone, asking more follow-up questions, our big mantra in Seattle with John Schneider was, the whole thing was we never have all the answers, which I thought was such a awesome, humble way of looking at it. And the great thing about John was he always gave the scouts a forum to present that new information. I know there's scouting staffs in the league right now that the scouts were cut out of the process a couple of months ago. So even if they stumble across a pertinent piece of information that could help the team, they never really are involved in any more meetings. So I do give John a lot of credit for the way he structured things in Seattle. But it's like that constant pursuit of answers. And that's going to go right up until they're on the clock. If you get a phone call from someone at a school and he's like, think about Laramie Tunsil a few years ago. The guy's got the bong strapped to his face and he's fallen in the draft. And so you never know. Draft weekend's full of unexpected stuff. So you're just trying to find those answers. When you're going to campus as a scout, who's the best person to talk to learn information about a guy? Who's the guy that, I wouldn't know to talk to, that you, in your many years of doing this, know exactly who to talk to learn some inside stuff? Yeah, it's a good question. I think you go into the school always has like what we call anchor sources kind of set up for you, especially nowadays. Back 25 years ago, no, you had to seek those guys out on your own. But now the schools do a great job of kind of lining up the day. You show up, you meet with the pro liaison, who is usually someone on the football staff. It used to always be an assistant coach, but now as these staffs have expanded, it's a designated, someone like the director of player personnel or whoever on the staff. And then trainer, strength coach, and the academic sources have become kind of an anchor. The academic advisors have become an anchor source as well, because again, that's a little different lens. They're seeing these players a little differently. They're seeing them through a lens of something that a lot of these players don't want to do. A lot of these guys don't like school. A lot of people didn't like school. We were doing it to get a job one day, right? Yeah. So, that's part of the NFL. I mean, some of these guys don't like practice. Some of these guys don't like the daily grind. They do it to get to Sunday, and that's what they love. But so you're trying to figure out who can work through the stuff they don't like and the hard stuff. And so that's why the academic people are a good piece of that puzzle. But if you ask me, and obviously coaches, man, you go to position coach, coordinator to get the football related questions, based off what you've seen on the tape. And they're the only ones that can answer that stuff. But to me, the sources I loved to talk to the most were the equipment guys, the EQ staff at all these places. I'm going to date myself using this reference, Pete. I know you know it, but the old movie, The Breakfast Club. Yes. And you remember the custodian? Carl, he said he was the eyes and ears of this institution. And that's in football. That's the equipment guys, man. I mean, they're seeing and hearing these guys in the locker room all day. So they know who's high maintenance, who wants their shoes spatted on game day, who wants the special wristbands, who wants a new pair of gloves every game, who leaves their locker dirty, all that stuff. They hear about the stuff with girls. I mean, they hear everything. So those guys, if you can ever get the equipment guys alone and be able to hit them up, they're great sources. They are really good sources. You're a great source for these guys that are now making their journey right towards the NFL draft, playing in the Senior Bowl. What's the number one thing you try to get across to these guys as people when you kind of have them underneath your dome per se, when you start to have real access to these guys? Yeah. And that can start like I'm going to Toledo on Friday of this week. I'm going to leave Detroit, and it's a 45-minute drive. Jason Candle, their head coach, asked me to come down, so I'll meet some Toledo players this week. Talking about draft process. So it depends, but a couple things, I think some of the players through this process, they get coached up by their agents to answer questions a certain way. And I tell them, don't come across overly coached up and rehearsed. Yes, there are respectful ways to answer certain questions, especially if they're, sensitive topics, but you got to stay true to who you are. You got to stay true to whoever raised you, whether that's mom or dad or grandma or aunt or uncle, whoever. They raised you to be you. Don't come into an interview and tell the people at the teams what they want to hear or say it a certain way. if you're kind of a raw dude that lets it fly and lets it rip, well, then be that guy. Let them know you, because, there's 32 different buildings in the NFL. I tell them this all the time. 32 different buildings, 32 different cultures. And you're going to fit in one of them. If you're just who you are, there's one of the 32 is going to be looking for a guy just like you. But what you don't want to do is act a certain way from Senior Bowl, to draft day. And then you show up in the building, they draft you because they think you're the guy that you presented yourself as being. And then you get there and you're like, man, this isn't me. Like, these aren't my people. This isn't my place. And they're going to know it too. And they're stuck with you now. This isn't there's no portal. Like, you're stuck with, they're going to cut you now. And you don't want to get cut either. You want to stay with the team that drafts you. So, for this part, just be yourself, and then the other thing in terms of our players now, when they reach back out to me, and I'll post up on social media about them, and they'll hit me back, or they're going on a visit somewhere. Like, I tell them this, like, hit me up. If you're going on a 30 visit somewhere, hit me up. If you got a question about the GM or the head coach or, anything like that, and they'll hit me up. And, I just try to manage expectations right now, because, the worst thing you can do is get to draft weekend where we're at right now. And as a player, you think you're going in the, late first round, and you end up going in the third, or, you think you're going in the third and you go in the sixth. And it's just a huge letdown. It's a disappointment. None of these guys should be disappointed. Pete, I'm not trying to get on a soapbox right now, but I think what we get lost in, and again, I'm as guilty of it as anyone, like, this whole thing becomes entertainment, right? And like, I'm pushing draft content 365 through the Senior Bowl, but we lose sight of that. This is these players' journey. This whole process is a job interview, and what this weekend is the realization of their dreams, right? Like, they've sacrificed, their families have sacrificed, their coaches have sacrificed from the time they were little kids to get to these next couple of days. It should be a really joyous time. So I hate when, players have set this bar that, hey, I'm going to be a first rounder. And then, I've been in draft rooms where we've called players in the third round, and that's a good draft pick. You're a top 100 draft pick. And they're completely bummed out, because they thought they were going on Thursday night. And here you are at the end of Friday afternoon, or Friday night, and you're calling them. So, again, with this could be even a more long-winded answer than I've already given you. But those are a couple things that I try to hit on the players with.
No, I mean, even having like the limited access that I have, I constantly am watching documentaries and old stuff, right? Like Tony Saragusa getting stuck in his house with like a camera on him as he continues, he's in free fall. But at the end of the day, these guys all do get drafted more often than not, right? Especially the guys that are going to be monitored or, post that there's a camera here or whatever. But you do. It is kind of a bummer to see it kind of gets lost in the sauce that this is a springboard for them. And the cool thing is that usually everybody kind of gets it together, right? By the time camp starts or mini camp starts, and then we're all kind of gunning for the same thing, to be an elite NFL player.
That's right. No, going back to, they'll come in for rookie minicamp, and that was always most places say it. I'll say that most teams tell their rookies that it doesn't matter where you start. You could be in this room right now as our first round draft pick, or you could be in here as an undrafted free agent or a tryout player, right? There's a lot of guys that don't even get signed after the draft, but they're coming in for rookie minicamp to try out. A lot of teams, say that, like, hey, it doesn't matter. Well, I felt like one of the reasons Pete Carroll and John Schneider were successful in Seattle is they lived that. If we had a young guy, late draft pick, outplayed an earlier guy, then we went with him. But that is the message. It doesn't matter how you got here. You're here now, and you're whatever team. You're one of our guys, and we're gonna wrap our arms around you and support you and try to make you the best football player possible. It is. It's not. And I do. That's another message I try to tell the players. It's not when you go, it's where you go, is more important. I wouldn't be concerned about, you want to get drafted as high as possible. I get it. There's money attached to each draft slot. But where you go is so critical. And I think no better place to look than the quarterback position. But that applies to every position. You just want to go somewhere where you can flourish and you're supported. And you would like to say that all 32 buildings were like that. But I think even casual NFL observers know that that's not the case everywhere. Some teams do a much better job of supporting and developing their guys than others.
How some of the guys, and we talk about the development of the draft. You have had a front row seat for 25 years. Back in the day when I was running around working for you and Mike George, like in like 1999 or 98, when something would happen, like there'd be a snafu in the draft process, like Plexico Burress wouldn't show up for an interview, it would turn out to be like a huge deal, right? It would spread like wildfire. It does not seem like that stuff happens as much today. It does seem like there's more of – these guys are more aware of maybe how important these situations are. Have you seen the athletes change over your time having a front row seat, in a front office and now with the Senior Bowl? Like how much more polished are these guys?
They're the word aware is a great one, Pete. Yeah, they're socially more aware, and I think that has something to do with social media. They're more aware of their own personal brand. I mean, that wasn't a thing, man. 25 years ago, we weren't talking about Peter Warwick having his personal brand when we met with him, and
yeah.
So that, so, I mean, think about Peter Warwick now, how big that dude would be on social media. He'd be a friggin', he was a superstar back then, but even now, I mean, he'd be next level with all his highlight clips and everything. But yeah, so they're just more mature. I get asked all the time, like what the impact of NIL is on these guys. And they're all kind of guinea pigs right now. Like we're in, it's still new. But I do think it cleans up the evaluation for some of these NFL teams. Is that, one of the questions has always been, what is this player going to do with more time on his hands and more money in his pockets, right? And we never knew. We never knew what that answer was going to be. Now these guys are making, some of them, significant money. Most of these quarterbacks are making seven figures.
Yeah.
In college, and they're driving around. I was just at Georgia the other day. Their quarterback's driving around driving on Athens in Lambo, and who knows what he's making in NIL. But I mean, so at least you're seeing how these guys handle the appearance side. Are they late for stuff? Do they have these appearances to fulfill NIL and they don't show up? How do they do with their money? Like, who's helping them manage it? And are they stupid with it? Are they blowing through it? So it's helping the teams. But yeah, these guys it's different now, man. I mean, they can't make mistakes. They can't slip up. I mean, smartphones have kind of, not ruined it in a sense, but certainly changed it. I mean, these guys can't slip up. It's amazing. Think about it, man. Like we hear everything now. We within instance, a guy gets a DUI. We know it within 15 minutes of a guy getting pulled over. And how little happens, it's really phenomenal. Just take this draft class, for instance, there's always a couple instances a year, but we're talking about hundreds of players.
Yeah.
And so they are. I think they're smarter.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, though, Jim. Especially like somebody like you that is an advocate for athletes and has been for so long. When you take the whole scheme of things, people don't look at the entire body of work we have here. They look at a couple things that happen to guys, and a lot of times it's just young guys who have made mistakes. But yeah, that's a very interesting point. Like, of all the possible setbacks, it's surprising we don't hear more.
Yeah, think about how many times you've seen a name on the ticker in the last 4 months since the draft process started. Maybe a couple times, and again, I know you and I knew each other at a different time in our lives, but I'm glad that, looking back, like, I'm glad you and I didn't have a lot of money in our pockets back then.
Yeah, me too.
It wouldn't have been pretty. So, yeah, man, these guys I take my hat off to them. There's a lot these kids have to juggle. I should say young men have to juggle, and they do a really good job.
You talk about the evolution of the process. The evolution of the Senior Bowl is something that I've witnessed because I knew it back in the day. And I just, from afar now, you can't deny the monster it's become. It was always a really cool deal, and I think it was more inside baseball or inside football in this kind of situation. But there's been an explosion of the Senior Bowl, and you've been at ground zero. What have you guys done differently that has allowed – and it's not a knock on the folks who came before you, but what have you guys done differently to have the Senior Bowl sort of spread its wings and become something that's in the forefront now of the draft process, in the front of the draft process, not just a part of it?
Yeah. No, I appreciate the question, Pete. Certainly not trying to be disparaging of my predecessors. Phil Savage is a good friend of mine, did a great job here. Steve Hale before him, God rest his soul. He passed away last year. This game's been great. We just celebrated our 75th anniversary. It's been the best All-Star game forever. I mean, I'm in our museum downstairs right now, and I'm looking at all these pictures of, like, the coaching wall over here has got, like, Mike Ditka, Bill Belichick, Paul Brown, Don Shula, Tom Landry, like all these guys. So got this great, rich history. It's been an incredible game forever. Really, there's been a couple things since we got to the Senior Bowl that we've really tried to do. And one was just use social media. I mean, some of the best advice I got as soon as I got this job from a couple close friends in the agent business was like, Jim, we own too much of the power right now. We own too much. You need to take some away from us. Because right now, these kids, they should know about Senior Bowl because of what it's been, but a lot of them don't. So when they get their invite, they'll come to us and say, should we play in this? And there's some agents out there, even to this day, that tell their guys not to play in the Senior Bowl, even though we see every year, I mean, guys benefit from it and very few guys ever get hurt by it. I mean, that was always the cardinal rule in scouting, is that you can only help yourself in an all-star game and not hurt yourself. And I'm not just saying that because of the chair I'm sitting in now. I mean, that's one of the axioms I kind of came up through the scouting business with. But so use social media, and and then the other thing was to, like, pull back the curtain on what we do here. I think it was always kind of shrouded in secrecy, right? Like, how do they pick rosters? How do they do this? And the first
now
part
it's
of that
a celebration, dude. If I follow you on social media or the Senior Bowl, it's like, hey, this is an announcement's coming, and then we start to see these guys. It's super exciting.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we've tried to do. So we'll start posting as soon as this draft's over. I'll post something on Monday on the first group. I'll post a couple players we like, and that'll continue through the summer. And then, this year we had 11 former NFL scouts on our staff. There was never a real football operation here before. We didn't have tape in the building before I got here, Pete. So
wow.
Think about, I had to call the league office and kind of barter for tape my first year here. So, these guys, our scouts, will be out at games in the fall, and they'll be during pregame drills when DBs are doing pedal drills and quarterbacks are just doing some soft toss or whatever. Like, our guys are up there right in the drills, like videoing those guys in a quick, 10-second clip. But we're trying to bring fans down to the field with us. And then I feel like an overlooked part of the evaluation is the body type. So we're trying to bring you down, see what this guy looks like, when you get up on him, and then some movement stuff, how he moves around athletically, and then they'll send it to me, and then I'll post it. So then, the great thing is then the guys get done with their game, and they go back to their locker, and they turn on social media, and there we are. They knew the Senior Bowl was there watching them. So
yeah, dude, that's amazing. I've been lucky enough to call games this year where I'll be, after the game, I'll see you post a guy like an offensive tackle, and it's somebody's right up there on him, and I'm like, wow, the Senior Bowl is everywhere. Like literally somebody's warming up, and I'll be like, sometimes I'll even look at the seating chart, Jim. I'll be like, I wonder if there's anybody from the Senior Bowl here, and I can't quite figure it out because I'm always looking to track you down. But like, but it is amazing, like the way you guys have used social media and the access you have found a way to get, deservedly so.
Well, we started it. I really want to do it for the fans. I wanted to do this so, like, again, part of the strategy was, like, we can't just show up in January and, like, wave our hand and say, hey, we're Senior Bowl, look at us. Like, because that's what the bowl games do, right? Like, the bowl games live in December and January, they play them, and they kind of go away. Well, we're different. We like, when I interviewed for the Senior Bowl job, and we've got a great chairman and a 12-person board, I interviewed and I said, if you don't want to hitch your wagons to the NFL draft process, I am not your guy.
Yeah.
If you're on board with that, then let's do this thing. And again, so it started in pulling back the curtain, showing the fans what we do, getting them interested 365. And then my first year, I was in Starkville for a Mississippi State, Florida game. And I've shared this story before, but Montez Sweat, who ended up being a first-round draft pick of the Commanders and just got traded this offseason and had a monster year for the Chicago Bears. I did a little video of him. I tagged him in it. And at the end of the third quarter, I left Starkville. I'm driving back roads, Mississippi, back here to Alabama. And I looked down at my phone, and there I saw Montez Sweat had followed me and retweeted the post. And I said, okay, now we got something here. This is what it's going to be. So that's what we've tried to do. I mean, we had like 40 million impressions my first year, and we've been over 400 million a couple years on Twitter. So, and really on Twitter alone, we do some stuff on Instagram too. I'm too old to have multiple platforms going, Pete. Like I was never, I didn't even have Facebook before I took this job. So I'm maxed out on Twitter. That's all I can do. But it's been fun, man. It's been fun building it. It's been a fun build, and I feel like we've taken it a long way. And now with the juniors that we added this year, the league lets us have juniors. Now that's another cool thing. Now it's one more thing we can continue to build from.
Well, one thing I want to ask you, I got a couple more minutes with you. You are a guy, again, I go back to, and this is my only exposure to the process. I can remember Mike George peppering our boy Gary Horton. Hey, get Ron Dugans in the Senior Bowl. Call Steve Hale. I remember being like, wow, this guy's like kind of overbearing. So I was like, geez. So do you deal with that? Like how hard is that for you to kind of make a cutoff? Like to tell guys that I'm sure you're close with, no, or I don't even know. I'm just assuming that's how it goes. But how does that happen? Guys at the end of the roster that might get invites to the Super Bowl that can't come.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're getting at. Again, it goes back to the tape. If you're doing your work, I wanted to strip all the politics away. If we're doing our work and we're watching the players, it doesn't matter if an agent calls or a college coach calls. If you can speak intelligently about the player that they're lobbying for, and they can tell you've put in the work, they should respect that, right? You know, if the goal is just to bring, I don't care who they are. I mean, so that was part with doing the tape and doing our own work. I've told the agents, I understand how hard a job they have because you and I lived it. Like that being an agent is not an easy thing, and it's getting harder. So my thing to them is, we're going to be watching the tape starting. We already have 80% of next year's group of Power 5 players done already. I haven't jumped on them. I'll get on them after the draft here. But call us in May, call us in June, call us in July, call us in August. I will tell you exactly what we think about these players. And again, we're not going to be right all the time. Nobody is. But I can at least help you get pointed in the right direction. And recruiting right now is so expensive for these guys. Putting them up and training them, once you sign them, is 6 figures for most of these players. So it's expensive. So I tell the agents, if we can help you save money on the front end in recruiting and all that, when we circle back in November, December, and I've helped you through the process, like, they should be in Mobile if we want them, right? Like it should be a two-way street. So that's really how it's worked. Again, I haven't won over every agent. There's still a couple of guys holding out and haven't really bought into this process. I think some of them just see these players as commodities, and they don't want to risk the injury. They'd rather sit on a third rounder than let a kid go compete and try to make himself a first rounder. So, but that's kind of been it. If you do the work, you can strip the politics out. I don't care. I've got some people in the agent community I consider real friends, longtime friends. And then there's guys that I don't know from Adam. But that does not factor in whether they get Senior Bowl invites, and same thing with the coaching side. I have coaches call me all the time. And it's hard to balance it, but you just got to do what's right. If you're doing what's best for the game, you got to do what's right and stick to your guns and what you saw.
Yeah, I've learned over the course of my life, right? Like it actually isn't that hard to make the next right decision, like to move with integrity, right? Like, okay, you know what it is if you filter out all the noise and stuff. And clearly that's
and then absolutely, Pete. I mean, if you're just being straight up, I think everybody just wants to be shot straight in life. If you're just honest with people, I mean, they might not agree with you, but you got to respect it. And then the other layer of our process, I should say too, like, our scouts do an incredible job. I've got to filter all that information, which I've never had to do before taking this job. It's not easy, like factoring in everyone's opinions. But the last part of our process before we do invite is we really lean into those relationships that we formed over all these years in the league. Like, one of the guys on our staff this year was Scott McLuhan. The guy's been a GM for 2 different NFL teams. And we take like half the league. I try to get like 14, 15, 16, 17 teams. And we just, whether it's the GM, assistant GM, director of player personnel, somebody that has access to their board. They can sit in the office, look at their board, or just pull up the grades and sort it by position and do it on a computer. But we go position by position. And like for this year with the quarterback class, it's like, okay, we like Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, Michael Penix, Spencer Rattler, Michael Pratt from Tulane. We're like, are you good with those 5? And they're like, yeah, we like all those 5. We'd love to see all those guys. And okay, for the 6th spot, here's who we like. And then you take input from them too, because these rosters are for the NFL teams. Yeah. I say it all the time. I work for the city of Mobile to keep this game strong in Mobile, Alabama, because it's such a huge economic thing for our community. And then I work for the 32 GMs. That's why we had our game during COVID. That's why, like, I was hell-bent that year during COVID to have this game, because I couldn't imagine being a GM and sitting there in April trying to pick players that I've never even eyeballed before, like never even stood in front of. So then we take their information and we take detailed notes coming up all those calls. And that's how we, kind of come up at the back end of the roster, is just trying to bring the guys they want to see. So it is truly a collaborative process with the NFL. And that's really what I wanted. It keeps me connected to those guys. People ask all the time, do I miss working in the league? And sometimes I do. I especially do right now when they're digging into the strategy part of it. But it's fun, man. It's the year round whole thing. It's a really fun process.
I got 2 more questions for you. Your work in the league, in front offices, was there ever a time where you felt like you took a risk on a guy, put your name on him, and the guy succeeded? Did that ever happen for you? Because you hear stories like that.
Yeah, I would probably say Shaquille Griffin, the corner from UCF, when we drafted him in the 3rd round in Seattle. And it was a learning experience because, up until that time, there wasn't a lot of there hasn't been traditionally a lot of volatility in coaching. Now it's crazy. I mean, now the guys position coaches are jumping a new spot every year, and ADs are pulling the plug after 2 years if guys don't win. But so this was a thing with the Griffin brothers. They came up under a certain coach, then that staff got let go. They bring in a new staff, and when you go into the school and you start doing the background work, the two staffs did not jive, right? There was a couple holdovers, but like Shaquille and Shaquem both, the Griffin brothers got crushed by one staff and then praised by the other one. And I was like, well, what's the deal here? So like I went all the way back and met with like their youth coaches in Tampa, St. Pete area, and their high school coach, who I'm friendly with to this day. So yeah, that was a little bit of a gamble. Like Shaquille was slipping through the cracks. He wasn't at the Senior Bowl. I want to say he was at the Hula Bowl that year. And there were concerns. There was character concerns on Shaquille. And then we took him in the 3rd round. He ended up going to a Pro Bowl or 2. And then the next year, the coolest thing ever, we draft his brother. Yeah. And reunite the twins. And to that day, like when I see footage of John Schneider making that call, like that was emotional. I'll never forget the day in that draft room. But that's one, man. That's one time I remember we kind of had to do a lot of work to gain conviction that we were bringing the right guy to the building, because that's your job as a scout. Everyone can watch the tape. Coordinators, position coaches, head coach, GM, they can all watch the tape and see what they see, but they don't have boots on the ground. They're not going to meet with the youth coach in St. Petersburg, Florida on these guys. So as a scout, you got to get that right. And if you bring the wrong guy to the building, that's on you. So that would be one case, Pete.
How about the happiest you've ever been as a kid growing up after a Lions draft? Who was the guy you were happiest? You were like, wow, Bobby Ross got it right, or Wayne Fonts got it right.
Wayne Fonts got it right. This might be the single greatest question I've ever been asked in an interview, Pete. So thank you for that. It's kind of a layup, though. I would say Barry in '89, in that '89 draft. I was sweating it out that the rival Green Bay Packers were going to take Barry, but they took Tony Mandrich. So we got Barry. So that would be one. I'm trying to think back of other guys I was really excited about. Oh, I remember being in college and they drafted Corey Schlesinger, the fullback from Nebraska.
And,
yes.
Yeah.
He had the big boy shoulder pads and then like classic fullback. I loved that pick. I remember when they picked Benny Blades out of Miami. I loved that pick. Yeah. So yeah, man, I was diehard Lions, man. I still to this day, a couple years ago, they demolished the old Pontiac Silverdome, the building I grew up going to Lions games when I was a kid and watching Billy Sims and Barry do their thing. And I bought a row of seats from the Pontiac Silverdome that's in my house now. So, yeah.
And the draft is in Detroit this year.
I know, and I'll be going back home for it. So that's kind of surreal that, growing up, again, people ask me all the time how I got into scouting. I had no advantage. My counselor at Michigan laughed at me when I told him what I wanted to do with my life. He asked me who I knew. I'm like, no, I'm from a small town in northern Michigan, man. I don't know anybody. But it was the draft. The draft hooked me from the time I was a little kid. My dad was coaching high school football. And so to like, again, be back, doing some of the coverage for it, it's pretty cool.
Executive Director of the Senior Bowl, Jim Nagy, all around awesome dude. I really, it's great to reconnect with you, man. You're the best.
You are so biased, Pete, but I love you, man. Thanks for having me on.
Love you too, brother. Thanks, Jim.
You got it. See you, buddy.
All right, see you, man. A visit to the mound. You can hear it on the Rogue Media Network with Stan Hough and Lark Smith. Stan, of course, pro baseball player, pro baseball manager, joining us to talk a little bit about baseball and some baseball as it relates to Central Texas. Thanks for joining us, Stan.
You bet.
Yeah, it's good to have you. I wanted to get your thoughts on some topical stuff and then get into your career a little bit. The topical thing I wanted to ask you about, it seems like every time I turn around now, there's chatter about umpires and their inability to do their jobs. Is this warranted now, or has it always been this way, and we're just talking about it more?
Well, in my experience, the higher you went in baseball, like from rookie ball to AAA, let's say that, the umpiring got better. And the umpires had more they used more discretion as well. I mean, the lower the level, umpires are learning the game, and they're more apt to strike back. And as they went higher, this is my experience, they got better. Their attitudes and demeanor became better. Anyway, there were some umpires I really enjoyed catching in front of, because they were calmer. I'll mention one is Drew Coble, who he was in the minor leagues when I was there, and he went to the big leagues and spent about virtually 20 years, I guess. But one thing I liked about him was his demeanor. He could calm a situation down very quickly. I mean, he's like putting the pin back in the grenade before it blew up, and he was good at that. Plus, he had the demeanor of, hey, well, let's talk about this, And there were times he did admit when he made a mistake, but there were very few. So I like that. Now, the one name that comes to mind right now is Angel Hernandez. Now, I just started coaching in the Astros organization when Angel was in the Florida State League. And there were some issues that took place. And to be quite honest, I thought his judgment was a little sketchy as well. But I never really challenged it, because that wasn't my job. I was the hitting coach, and that was up to the manager. Angel, what I've seen in these video shots, I've seen most of them on YouTube, and I know they're just showing the bad stuff. But if he's calling pitches 6 to 8 inches outside strikes and pitches down the middle, he's calling balls. So these guys are up there, and everything depends on the better judgment of the referee, the umpire behind the plate, and the guys on the bases. So if the guy's missing that much, and I don't know. At some point in time, they're going to have to do something about, when it comes time to rehire him, maybe they won't do it. I don't know. But anyway, I knew Angel when he was in the Florida State League.
How about your experiences? I mean, you were a manager and a coach for a very long time. Did you ever have an instance where you felt you were 1,000% in the right with an umpire and you were willing to go to any lengths to let him know that?
The only time you take it to the tops when you protest, and it's not judgment. You can't protest. It's a rule violation. That's steadfast. So I can only think of one time when that's happened, and I really can't remember now what happened in that game. It's been so long ago. But
so as a manager or a coach, it's a rules violation that you know that you can go all the way on.
Exactly. You can file a protest with the league. Okay. And they have to note that and make it public to everybody in the stands that the managers filed a protest. You cannot protest judgment calls though. So that's their judgment, and it stands right there, whether good or bad. We had one. I'll tell you one play we had where the ball was hit to the second baseman. The ball was thrown wide to first base. The first baseman, we were on defense. Our first baseman came off the bag to sweep the tag, and he missed the runner. The runner also missed first base. Well, this is where I got confused, and when he got back to, I said, tag him out. When the umpire, what happened was the runner came back to first, and the umpire called him safe. Well, I said, what's the problem? So that's an appeal play. So we go in, get set and all that. We make the appeal. He still calls him safe. So it confused me. Now, I wasn't thinking. I knew this. I knew better than this. The appeal is an automatic appeal. That means once the runner misses first base and the first baseman missed the tag, the appeal is the first baseman says to the umpire, the runner missed first base, I'm tagging him out. So he has to tag him out. That's an automatic appeal. It's not a set appeal where you stop play, pitcher gets the ball and goes in, comes set and steps off and throws it to first. No, automatic appeals when the first baseman needed to tell the umpire he missed first base and tag him before he comes back to first. So I said, well, I'm going to call the umpire supervisor. And the umpire, as I'm leaving the field, said, make sure you dial 9 to get out. Well, I laughed all the way to the dugout. All the way to the office when he said that. And found out later exactly why. And I knew that already, but in the heat of the moment, I thought, we gotta go through an appeal on this. Anyway, that's what happened. I thought that was kind of fun. And me and that umpire actually got along pretty good.
It sounds like he had a sense of humor. How about the NFL draft is this weekend? You were taken in the second round by the Mets, I think in '74. That's pretty lofty expectations that can come with a selection like that. Did you feel the pressures of being, and I know you didn't go right to New York, obviously, but did you feel pressures being selected high in that organization?
No, not at all. All I felt like doing was going out and busting my tail and making a team. When I got to spring training, a former number 1 pick got released that spring, and he'd only been there 2 years. Wow. So it really comes down, the part about playing is that my first spring training, there was 145 pitchers and players that were in this spring training. And I'm thinking, you got 5 teams, and they're, you got the rookie ball, you got A ball, two A ball teams. That's at 3, and you got a double A and a triple A. That's 5. Okay, you virtually, let's say 20, 22 guys on each team. So you got 110 guys, and you got 140 people in spring training. There's going to be some releases or trades. And from the very first day, guys, people were coming in, and they start you off. Going hard the first day. They expect you to be in shape when you get there. Well, some guys did not take advantage of that, and all the running we were doing, they were throwing up, stuff like that, because it wasn't easy. Well, those guys virtually got let go because they weren't ready, and they didn't have time to get them ready. It was, we were down there virtually a month, and 2 weeks of that is physical training and going through all the bunt defenses, cutoffs and relays, pickoffs and rundowns and stuff like that, and set plays, pick plays, and going over all that. Then 2 weeks, the last 2 weeks of that spring training is when you start playing games. I remember those 2 weeks after that was up, they came in and said, okay, we're changing the schedule up. Now we're going to work out in the morning. We're going to do this, this, and this, and then we're going to come in from lunch, and then we're playing the Cincinnati Reds team who's coming over here. Well, I thought, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Here I am for the Mets, and now we're going to play against another team, the Cincinnati Reds. Well, when we got out there, every one of their guys looked like they were 7 feet tall. And I'm thinking, what have I gotten myself into here? And it was like, all of a sudden, I'm getting my anxiety levels going up, and I'm thinking, well, you're either going to have to do this right now or just turn around and go home and do something else. Well, I got real determined right there, and I said, I'm going to do this. So my first at bat, I got a base hit. So it was, I thought I just conquered the world, to be honest with you. It was now the anxiety level and anticipation is so high. You just, after you do one thing good, it seems like it levels out a little bit. But
those were incredible Reds teams too. I mean, you're talking about Pete Rose and Tony Perez, and
well, they were ahead of me. They were a little bit ahead of me.
Okay,
but yeah, their minor league teams were strong. I can't remember some of the guys I played against there. I mean, I remember some of the Cardinals. I played against Tommy Hurd and Jim Riggleman.
Yeah,
and those guys. So Mike Calise. Anyway, it was tough. I'm thinking I wasn't going to be there 1 year. I ended up playing 12 years, and then started coaching and that kind of stuff.
It worked out for you. All right, last question. You're from Waco. You spread your wings. You manage and play pro ball. Now you're back in Waco. What are the odds as this city continues to grow and expand itself? What are the odds they get a pro ball team in the city of Waco?
Well, I've been working on that myself. Matter of fact, we had an opportunity here a few years ago, and we had everything all buttoned up and ready to go, and the finance crew out of San Mateo, California, backed out after promising that we got it going. They even sent a guy here to take photographs and all that, and he came over and we had lunch and all that, talked, and everything looked good, and it didn't happen. I believe Waco will get a team back. I mean, we're still working on that right now. We had hoped to start the season playing either at Baylor or MCC, but that didn't work out. So we talked a little bit about the UIL fields. And, beer is a big profit item in ball. So it came down to we really needed to get the season started without beer but it was it was at a point where people had already decided not now. So, and I understand why MCC and Baylor didn't want this to happen. There are those guys that had those teams. That's their field, and I'd sure understand it. So there's holding no ill will towards them. But we're gonna have to build a ball field, and the projections on a ball field, just for baseball are not good. But when it's multi-use, it's outstanding, because instead of being open for 4 or 5 months a year and it being and sitting still for the next 7 or 8, or 6 or 7 months, and you got something going on for 220 to 230 days a year, so you're driving revenue right there. So people are saying the cost. What's the cost? Well, the cost, until Baylor did something a little bit more than football out there, I'm sure their cost was that's a school deal though. But you got to drive revenue one way or the other.
Yes.
So we were independent of all that though, and we had to do it on our own. So far, there's interest. I wish there was interest enough to go ahead and build a field. There's some other things that come into play. Major League Baseball is pretty much taking over independent baseball. So if you don't partner up with Major League Baseball, you're probably not going to get any scouts to come see your players, because they won't let them, since you didn't partner up with Major League Baseball. So that's where they kind of had.
Wow.
So if they won't come see your players, because the players, that's the very reason they're in independent professional baseball, is to get seen by an organization and get signed. Well, you won't have any players then, and if you did, it would be nothing more than a low-level beer league. So that nobody's going to come see that.
Yeah.
So when I was with Fort Worth, we had 12 players signed in 4 years. So Max Scherzer was there, and also Luke Hough. Aaron Crow came later after I was gone, but those guys pitched in the big leagues. Aaron Crow and Hough pitched for Kansas City, and I believe Max started with Arizona. I'm not sure.
Yeah, he did, and that's some pretty rare air you're talking about, guys like that.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, Max Scherzer is intense. Well, I got ejected from a game in Lincoln. I was asking the catcher a question, because we had a guy struggling out there. I was just asking the catcher, and the umpire thought I was talking to him. So threw me out of the game. I said, I'm going to go out and talk to him. I heard somebody behind me, and it was Max. I turned around and said, what are you doing? He said, well, I'm going to help you. I said, I don't need any help. Go back in the dugout and stay in the ball game. And I went up to the clubhouse after that. But Max, he's a determined guy. He's got vision, that's for sure. I think he's with the Rangers right now. I don't know if he's back in the rotation yet or not. He had an arm injury.
Earlier in the year, I know he did. I think he's still working back from that.
Right. And Luke Hough was great too. He's a worker. He worked his tail off. For both guys to come, they had finished their college careers, and they were eligible for the draft. And what was offered to them by the teams that were going to draft them turned out to be kind of a bait and switch deal, where they offered them lower money when it came out. So they opted to come to Fort Worth. And one of the player personnel director I had there was a guy named Barry Moss, who was also in Moneyball.
Yeah.
Later on. Yeah, Barry was in Moneyball. And he was our player personnel guy, and he made a deal with Boris's group.
Scott Boras?
Scott Boras, and I was talking to Scott Champerino too, who's working with Boris as well, and I was indicating to Scott that, you know, these guys come to Fort Worth, we're going to treat it just like it's a regular spring training. We put them on a 75 pitch limit, and they're going to get 4 or 5 starts before the draft. And for both of them, it was a good business move. Both of them got about $2 million more than they were offered. So I don't remember what the actual numbers were, but they did very well. It's a good business move for both of them.
Yeah, well, good business move by us having you on. I appreciate you taking the time, Stan. I really do.
Hey, I appreciate it too. Enjoyed it.
Yeah, A Visit to the Mound is the podcast. You can hear it on the Rogue Media Network. Stan Hough and Lark Smith. Stan, thanks for the time, brother.
You bet. You take care now. Thank you.
Take care. Special thanks to Jim Nagy and everybody at the Reese Senior Bowl for making that happen. They were super accommodating, and I know Jim has a lot going on this time of year, so really cool. Thank you to Stan Hough. Remember, you can see his podcast or listen to his podcast, A Visit to the Mound. That's on the Rogue Media or the Rogue Sports Network. You can listen to my podcast, The Payoff with Pete, on the Rogue Media Network, and we're whittling all this down. I'm probably making it more complicated than it is. Either way, not complicated at all. Me and Zach will be back next week with you. And remember, we're going live soon, so have patience with us as we work out the kinks as we ramp up.
We are Rogue Media Sports.